Hello and welcome to the Endpoint equation. This is the podcast where we break down the real-world variables behind endpoint management. To get introductions out of the way, I'm Liam. I've spent the last 15 years in the IT and EUC trenches. I've seen many systems and technologies come and go, but one challenge never changes. How do we deliver a stable, predictable experience to the end user? Today we're talking about PSADT, the PowerShell App Deployment Toolkit. But this isn't a how-to guide. You won't hear me recite PowerShell syntax, so instead this is a strategy discussion. We're talking about the why. How do you align your application lifecycle with your device management strategy to ensure whether you're on-prem, in the cloud, or somewhere in between, your environment remains stable? It's time to stop treating PSADT as a helper script and start seeing it as a foundational strategy. So let's go into what PSADT actually is. Let's strip away the misconceptions. In EUC, we often conflate our delivery tools with our deployment logic. We talk about Intune apps as if the tool is doing the heavy lifting. To build a resilient strategy, you have to separate the two. Think of it this way: if Intune or SCCM is a delivery vehicle, then PSADT is the operational manual sitting inside the box. The vehicle gets the package to the door, but the manual determines how it's opened, how it's assembled, and what to do if a piece is missing. By moving the brains of the installation into this framework, you make your environment portable. You're no longer locked into a specific vendor. If you move tools in 3 years, your applications don't care. The logic's already standardised. And that's the shift from task-orientated engineering to a strategy-orientated architecture. Most modernisation projects don't end with a crash. They fail quietly, and what I mean by that is they fail behind a sea of green compliant ticks in your console. The dashboard looks perfect, but on the floor it's a different story. Apps failing inconsistently, upgrades knocking users offline, senior engineers trapped in firefighting cycles. This is what happens when you focus on the vehicle but ignore the cargo. Without a framework, you're running a digital Wild West. You have the artist problem. You have 5 engineers with 5 different packaging styles. You have the tribal knowledge trap, logic that only lives in the head of someone who left the company months ago. PSADT fixes this by enforcing governance. It replaces the chaos of individual habits with the reliability of an engineering framework. Now this is where we shift from craftsmanship to engineering. Instead of reinventing the wheel for every new app, you adopt a standardised assembly line. PSADT forces every deployment into a predictable sequence: pre-install, install, and post-install. Think about the impact on your team. If a deployment fails at 3 AM and your on-call engineer doesn't have to decipher a custom script, they already know exactly where the logic lives in the structure, and at scale, the fewer variables you have, the more consistency you achieve. So you're no longer hoping for success, you're designing it. In a native silent deployment, for example, IT is often an uninvited interruption. An app closes without warning, a reboot triggers mid-presentation, and this is why users learn to fear IT updates. It's a breakdown of trust. PSADT turns that interruption into a digital handshake. It gives your deployment a face. We're talking branded trust, so notification containing company logo, company name, that says this is a safe, verified update from your IT team. It gives the user agency in the form of deferrals, letting a user say not now because they're in a meeting or on a deadline. And it gives graceful transitions, so instead of killing the app forcefully, you're asking users to save their work and close in their own time. When you use this framework, the experience is identical regardless of the tool. You've standardized the human element of the deployment. Now behind that handshake is a hardened logic layer, so we're moving away from hope-based deployment, copying switches from forums and hoping they work. PSADT acts as your boots on the ground. It provides contextual intelligence. It checks the state of the machine before moving a file. Is it a shared kiosk machine or a dedicated laptop? It gives deep discovery and queries the system state to see what's actually there. It gives exit code translation, interprets a successful reboot required so your console doesn't just report a generic failure. And it gives defined success. So we've moved from the script finished to the application is verified and ready. And when your scripts become aware, your deployments become surgically accurate. And we can prove this with logging. In most environments, troubleshooting is digital archaeology. You're digging through cryptic event logs to find a failure from 3 hours ago, and it's a massive drain on engineering hours. So PSADT gives every app its own black box recorder, if you like. A centralised truth, so every app logs to the same location in a human readable format. It gives you some clarity, so you don't just see that it failed, you see where it failed. Was it a blocked file? Was it a pre-install cleanup issue? And so on. So you're building a self-documenting infrastructure, and you're giving support teams a map so they can solve problems without escalating. As we look at the bigger picture, the migration and co-management, PSADT becomes your universal translator. So moving from SCCM to Intune shouldn't be this great migration where you rebuild everything. It should be an evolution. When you decouple your logic from your delivery tool, you gain technical sovereignty. So there's 3 points here. So number 1 is package once, deploy anywhere. So the same wrapper works in SCCM today and it will work in Intune tomorrow. You're eliminating this parallel universe. You don't manage 2 versions of reality, so why do we manage 2 versions of an app? The behaviour is identical. And you're lowering the stakes so you can move that one scary app because the logic's already transparent. And I think most importantly, you're no longer a hostage to the delivery tool. You've built a foundation that makes the bridge to the cloud almost invisible when we're talking about SCCM and Intune. Now, a quick reality check. So PSADT is not a magic bullet. If you're using it to hide messy scripts, you're just building a more organised way to fail. To stay on track, you have to avoid strategic drift. Now, in my experience, there are 3 areas where this can fall down. So you can stop the copy and paste culture. Don't just grab code you don't understand and chuck it in your script. You should enforce governance. You need a golden template for PSADT to work, and don't let everyone customize the core framework. And don't over-engineer it. So if a native MSI works 100% of the time and is simple, you don't have to wrap it with PSADT. You can use the framework where it adds value to your deployment. And finally, version control. If your packages aren't managed, you have no undo button. Adopting this approach isn't about adding a tool, it's about choosing structure over chaos, and it's about deciding that your applications will be consistent and have a standardised footprint. Management tools will change, platforms will evolve, but when you own the logic layer, you own the outcome. So standardise the behaviour and the delivery becomes the easy part. Thanks for listening to the Endpoint Equation, and I'll catch you in the next episode.